You're listening to the podcast against Giygas. Episode 11, in which our hero makes a new friend from the mountain kingdom of Dalaam. Far, far away from Eagle Land and North America alike, on the distant eastern continent of Chomo, there lied the old mountain kingdom of Dalaam. And in the very center of that mountain kingdom lied the highest mountain on the continent, and the fourth highest worldwide. On top of that dizzying purple cloudy peak lied the golden palace of the Elephantine Emperor, guarded by hulking statues of the ancient elephant gods worshipped by the Dalaamese people centuries ago. And within that palace of gold and jade lied the opulent domicile of the current Elephantine Emperor, or Haughty of Dalaam, to sit upon the ivory throne, and of course, his heir apparent, the august child Puyi Huangtaitze, next in line to usher in the Xuantong era. The imperial court of Dalaam was a misty dreamland of tradition and ritual, a perfectly preserved glimpse into a distant era lost to time. While years ago the people of this mountain nation opted for a republican government in lockstep with the rest of the world, they also chose to preserve its 3,000-year-old office of the emperor as a constitutional monarchy. Yes, it was a symbolic office, but the symbolism was the whole point. The very pageantry of it all was far more important than any power being wielded. The display of their country's ancient history and culture, rigid and unchanging against the relentless and uncaring march of time and progress. An institution as rigorous as the Dalaamese monarchy, then, needs a monarch just as rigorous. And the Crown Prince Puyi was shaping up to be precisely such the monarch his homeland required. From birth, the young prince was subjected to a strict regiment of lessons, disciplines, and drills, and was expected to achieve complete mastery of all the traditional and a few recent martial arts, both armed and empty-handed, perfect fluency in all the ancient and a few useful recent languages, be proficient in philosophy, calligraphy, astronomy, reverse psychology, advanced gastronomy, the composition of major symphonies, and amateur field phlebotomy, and more than proficient in logic, rhetoric, arithmetic, and limericks, withstand a numerous amount of physical and mental agonies, and beat his predecessor, the Guangxu Emperor's record time in solving the Rubik's Cube blindfolded, all before his coming of age at 13 years old. Well, the grand anniversary had finally come to pass. And there sat Puyi on a throne of gold and jade in his own private quarters, the room just as blindingly bright with precious metals and jewels as the rest of the palace, a long red carpet on the floor which proceeded from the doors of his chamber to his own seat of power. Despite the ostentation on display from his loyal retainers, advisors, and eunuchs, they all adorned in fine brocade robes of all colors of the rainbow, Puyi preferred to dress simply, a plain white smock, the uniform he donned during his martial arts training, and a black belt to fasten it, which of course signified his complete mastery of those arts. While the tiny feet of his retainers made timid steps around their young charge in fine jewel-studded silk slippers, Puyi wore plain slip-on black shoes, which, truth be told, were starting to get a little worn from his reckless excursions outside the palace. In only one way was Puyi similar to his foppish retainers and caretakers, in that he, as well as them, was clean-shaven on the head, save for the traditional hairstyle of their country's long history, a long, braided queue that ran down their backs and grew as long as they could for as long as they lived. For, yes indeed, that mysterious boy from Dalaam who accosted Ness and his friends so many times before, sometimes as a nuisance and sometimes an ally, was none other than the heir apparent to the ivory throne of Dalaam, the Xuantong Emperor-to-be, the august child Puyi Huangtaitze. The day before Puyi's 13th birthday, which was about 3 days or so after the other children ate that fateful slice of magic cake, was to be the final exam of his hardest lesson yet, the recital of his Mu training. Puyi had spent the last week mastering the art of emptiness, of realizing that to philosophize means to know that one day you are going to die. On the day before his greatest triumph, Puyi effortlessly scaled another mountain all the way to the top, the second highest peak in all the land, but with its craggy edges, a near perfect straight line, and such few cracks for footholds, nonetheless held the world record for most difficult to scale. The top of this peak was flat and grassy, and without even needing to catch his breath from the climb, Puyi sat down in a lotus position, closed his eyes, and breathed, and emptied his mind of all thought, feeling, desire, and ambition. A whirlwind appeared before Puyi, and when it faded, a wizened old man appeared, wearing a ragged green robe and leaning on a wooden cane. This was the mysterious figure in the young prince's life who he referred to as the Star Master, a mystic who had mastered the invisible forces of the universe and was rumored to possess the almighty star storm technique, the ability to throw down the very heavens at an enemy. He trained the boy in extracurricular lessons of strange otherworldly power, even teaching him how to walk across the sky. All, of course, while being invisible, inaudible, and perfectly imperceptible to a single living soul save the young heir apparent. The mystery man was just as important to his upbringing as the other tutors, but the only one among them all that Puyi showed an even modicum of respect, even admiration. Such admiration, of course, Puyi had no ability to feel whatsoever on this very important day. Well met, Puyi Huang Taizi. I am the spirit of your ancestors. Do you wish to learn true emptiness? Puyi said nothing in response, but the old man got the gist. He bowed his head and mumbled a mantra to himself, and the world around Puyi faded to black. The misty form of the Star Master then appeared before him. First, I shall break your legs. Do you accept this? Puyi said nothing. His mind was suddenly filled with the sickening crack of bone and sinew, followed by an excruciating pain in his legs, and the sensation of those same legs now gone. He did not move a muscle. You don't need your legs, huh? Then next I shall take your arms and feed them to the crows. Do you accept this? Puyi said nothing. Next were his arms, cracking and ripping apart from his body, the agony of flesh ripping from flesh, and the sensation of all four phantom limbs. He did not utter a single peep. Oh, look at you now, nothing but a worthless stump. How will you be the emperor now? What about your eyes? Do you want to live in eternal darkness? Puyi said nothing. He felt fingers dig into his sockets and rip the gooey eyeballs from his face, the optic nerves stretching against the pole before snapping off from the sockets, and then there was nothing before him but black. He barely blinked. What now? Would you care if you lost your hearing? Would you care if I cut off your ears? Puyi said nothing. Next came the sensation of a knife against his ears, slowly slicing and peeling the things off his head, and then followed complete silence. Nothing left to perceive but the overwhelming agony of his missing limbs and sensory organs. A deafening whisper emerged in his mind. Your mind is all you have left. In the end, I will take your mind, though you probably won't allow that, will you? So, you can't answer. You can't even move. Are you sad? Are you lonely? If you lose your mind, you also lose any feelings of sadness. Do you accept this? Very well. I will take your mind. Puyi said nothing, and then vanished. His sensation disappeared, his perception disappeared, and with it, his very ego disappeared. The cluster of consciousness that was once the Crown Prince Puyi aimlessly took up space in a vast eternal void, thinking nothing, feeling nothing, wanting nothing. It wasn't until 500,000 years had passed that the cluster of thought noticed in the void a strange rotating rock, and its curiosity piqued, propelled itself to obtain a closer look. It was a world, and on the world were 3 major continents, and on the largest and easternmost continent was a misty, purple-clouded mountain kingdom, and in that mountain kingdom was a tall and steep mountain peak, and on that peak was a young boy, wearing a simple martial arts smock tied together with a black belt, bearing a long queue on his head that reached the middle of his back, deep in meditation, completely empty of all thought and emotion. The subtle body floating in space saw this uniquely empty vessel and found it as good a place to occupy as any. And the next thing it knew, Puyi willed himself awake from his meditative trance, opened his eyes, and breathed in the sweet and comforting mountain air of his homeland. It was the day before his 13th birthday. And now it was his birthday proper. The Crown Prince of Dalaam sat in his golden throne room and took in the pomp and spectacle of his coming of age. Unlike most other boys on their birthdays, Puyi neither received a cake with candles, wrapped presents, or a nice little get-together with his friends. Indeed, a birthday for the Crown Prince was more a celebration for everyone else in Dalaam than for himself. And this time, what a celebration it was. Parades, fireworks, music, and singing. There wasn't a single person in Dalaam, within or without the palace alike, that was not elated over their emperor-to-be. Every court official, every high priest, practically everyone important enough, barring perhaps only the elephantine emperor himself, presented themselves before the young prince, and one among them presented before the seated boy a sheathed sword. Puyi Huang Taizi, you have on this day completed every test and achieved every task we have asked of you these 13 years of your life. Rise from your seat of power and accept the Sword of Kings, as is now your right. Puyi rose from his seat and approached the bowed official. He accepted the sword with the solemnity the occasion demanded, then unsheathed it, and put on a show for all those in attendance. As Puyi demonstrated a variety of forms, the Sword of Kings, an elegant straight jian blade, seemed to cut through even the air in the boy's expert hands. With a great flourish, the Crown Prince sheathed the sword and accepted it with a formal bow, which made the gathered retainers erupt in cheers and applause. Well, it looks like he finally got a birthday present after all. Now, Prince Puyi, it is time to take up your destiny. You are to join the chosen 4, 3 boys and 1 girl, of whom it is foretold will defeat the destroyer of worlds. The leader of the 4 is not you. Whereas he spent the majority of the ceremony with stern detachment, these words elicited a single, subtle eyebrow raise. The leader is a young boy from across the sea. You are destined to bow before him, offer him the great blade of our 3,000-year kingdom, the Sword of Kings, and pledge your life to his service. Surely he wasn't hearing this man right. Surely there was some mistake. Our priests had visions of him and drew his image on a scroll to aid you in remembering exactly who you will be serving and not leading. A retainer bowed before Puyi and unfurled a scroll. No, there was no mistake. There he was, that weak, whiny milksop of a little boy for whom he had walked across the sky and bailed out so many times before. There was his innocent little deer before the headlights eyes and his dopey little smile. A visage to inspire dread in the black heart of the destroyer of worlds, indeed. Now go, walk across the sky, find this boy and serve him, do whatever he commands of you. Only he can stop the destroyer of worlds. Yes, only he, and absolutely not you. No, not you in any way whatsoever. Puyi, clenching his teeth and fists, made a show of deference and gratitude to the crowd before he left his chambers. He did not immediately take his leave of the Golden Palace, as instructed, but made a detour to his training hall, making sure to discard the stupid scroll of Ness's face in some corner or other of the palace's hallways. The training room was full of life-sized terracotta figures, hundreds of them. In his early youth, this grand hall was where he honed his fighting skills, but as he grew older and more competent in the deadly arts, it now served little other purpose than a place to let off steam. Well, while the day before Puyi might have emptied himself of all emotion, there was plenty of steam in him to let off now. He unsheathed his new sword and glared at one of the clay figurines. Him? Bow before him? Serve him? After preparing his whole life, constantly honing his body and mind to the point where he could take on an entire army alone if he wished it, 13 years of rigorous training and pain and hardship, and not to mention that ritual of Mew didn't exactly tickle, and for what? To serve a weakling, a crybaby, a boy from Eagle Land? Who did he think he was? When Puyi consciously stopped raging at his own situation and at Ness alike in his mind, he saw that not a single terracotta figure was left standing, and the floor was covered with so many tiny pieces of obliterated statue that it looked more like a beach than a palace room. Puyi took in some breaths and scanned the room, and seeing another fawning retainer made his rage boil inside him once again, especially when he noticed the man was showing him that hateful scroll bearing the artist's rendition of Ness's face. Your Majesty? You dropped this? Scowling at the man, he approached him and snatched the stupid scroll out of his hands. The retainer let out a terrified whimper and made himself scarce from his young charge's presence. Finally, as calm as he ever was going to be about the whole thing, Puyi made the long trek down the mountain of the Golden Palace. As high up as it wasn't difficult per se to climb up or down, as there were gently winding roads that led from the palace to various points of the small mountain village that made up the Dalaam capital, all the way to the very bottom. Having reached flat ground, he stood still, watched the busy and far more urban section of the capital below the mountain still celebrating his coming of age. A parade so raucous it kept them all from noticing the very boy they were celebrating right in their midst. Puyi closed his eyes, took in a deep breath, and put his hands together in salute. When he opened his eyes, they were flat white, and a ring chimed in his mind. When he spread out his arms, everything around him, the city, the people, the celebration, all slowed to a near complete stop. The world was caught in a moment in time, and going through it so slowly it looked as though everything was frozen. Now Puyi was ready to walk across the sky. Now you might be thinking, wow, the ability to stop time itself. It's the ultimate power. I could go anywhere in an instant, do all my homework, and then have the whole weekend to myself, or stay up all night doing whatever I want and then go to bed right at my bedtime. I could make my especially mean teacher go away. Why, I could maybe even rule the whole world. Well, you would only be right in the first regard. You could go anywhere in the world in an instant, which is exactly what Puyi was about to do now. But think about it. Time moves to a crawl, and unless Puyi puts his hands back together, it would take 10,000 years for the second hand to move to the next second tick. There is no motion, no feeling, no adding of one to another number. There isn't even forever, because there is no time. You can talk to no one, touch no one, and you can do nothing but move through the empty space unoccupied by all the others frozen and turned off time. And furthermore, time had not stopped for Puyi himself. Who in their right mind would want to age faster than everyone else in a parallel world utterly cut off from every friend and fun thing the world has to offer? No, he could only use this power sparingly and for specific purposes, and he took it as seriously as he did his other numerous disciplines. Puyi took a single step, and the capital vanished in an instant. As he took gingerly paces with his hands behind his back and his chin up in a haughty expression, the world beside him zipped and whizzed by, like looking out the window of a car, if the car was going 1,000,000,000 miles per hour. He walked for about 5,000 miles, in other words, for only about 2 minutes or so, before he reached where he meant to go, brought up his hands one more time in salute, and turned the world back on. Puyi arrived at his destination, knowing all the while exactly where to go, even without the helpful scroll with Ness's face. He found himself on a sandy shoreline, the sun bright and hot in its zenith, and before him were 2 boys and 1 girl. Ness and Paula were hard at work building a huge sandcastle. They never even really knew they had it in them to build a sandcastle so massive, so elaborate, but deciding to start their day with a little fun burying Jeff in the sand, one thing led to another, and the children then found themselves with a keep, then battlements around that keep, then bastions connecting the battlements, and before they knew it, plenty of crenellations and parapets, arcading, portcullises for the drawbridges, and for those drawbridges, an impressive moat around the whole thing. Meanwhile, Jeff's skinny feet stuck out of the front gates and waved back and forth in time as they deliriously sung a song together while they worked. Warmed up weather, let's get together, and do it again. Ness and Paula noticed the Dalaamese boy and warmly approached him, Ness offering a lay among the 12 or so already around his neck, both of them smiling big, toothy grins, absolutely zonked out of their minds. Why, hello there. I'm Ness, and these are my friends, Paula and Jeff. It did not escape Puyi's attention that Ness had first introduced him to Jeff buried in the sand, and then to Paula beside him. Welcome to Summers. Here, have a free lay. We are making a sandcastle, if you want to join us. Now that's a great idea. I say, do you know how to build a belfry? Puyi scowled at them, then went to Jeff, stuck his whole arm in the middle of the castle, and pulled the other boy with one yank out of the thing and onto his feet, making the structure collapse into a pile of loose sand. Oh, and it was getting to be so nice. Oh, but that's all right. After all, isn't the very fact that some things don't last forever precisely what makes them beautiful? By the way, I didn't get your... Oh! Puyi wound up his open hand and slapped Jeff as hard as he could across the face. Jeff fell over and landed face first on the sand, and Ness stepped closer to Puyi, still with the same stupid smile on his face. Hey, what did you do that for? We're all friends here. Why don't you... Ah! Puyi slapped Ness just as hard as he did Jeff, and the smile on his face vanished in an instant as he headed for the sand as well. Now it was Paula's turn to approach the boy, as indignant as her wide grin would allow her to be. Say, you're not very nice. Why, I have half a mind... Ugh! Just because Puyi was on an urgent mission, it didn't mean he wasn't a gentleman. He sucked on his index finger and gave Paula the wettest wet willy he could muster. Ness, Paula, and Jeff eventually recovered from their assaults and looked themselves over, the spell finally broken. Ness looked just as beach-bummed out as Jeff had earlier on, covered with tropical flowers on his shirt and shorts, as well as the lays around his neck. What are we doing here? Paula saw herself in a black and pink polka-dotted sundress and big sunglasses that made her look like a bug. Oh my, I look ridiculous. We all look ridiculous. Jeff regarded his own outfit, an old-fashioned romper emblazoned with a red, white, and blue design based on the flag of Winters. Speak for yourself. I think I rather look the business in this ensemble. When the 3 children finally noticed Puyi standing before them, they all gasped at once and cowered behind each other, neither one not really sure which among them to thrust in front. Oh no, it's him! And he has a sword now! And then, because why wouldn't it at a time like this, a thundering fanfare of brass and violins filled the air. Photos taken instantaneously. I am a photographic genius, if I don't say so myself. Okay, get ready for it. Puyi shot a glare at the photographer that cracked the air like a whip. The man was stunned into silence at the very sight of the furious boy. Fuzzy pickles. The photographer man simply pushed the capture button on his machine. Nice photo. Bye-bye now. However a magical photographer man who lives in the sky does run or float away for his life, this photographer man did just that, leaving the 4 children alone together once again. Oh, you can talk, like we can. Puyi trained his gaze back on Ness, giving him the dirtiest look his face muscles could possibly contort into pure, unbridled scorn. Did you just say I can talk like you can? Hearing it read back to him like that, Ness was horrified by what he accidentally said and covered his mouth. Oh no, I didn't, I meant that. What? My outrageous Dalaamese accent isn't thick enough for you? I'm from the Far East and bald, and I have a big braid, so I don't belong in your great Western developed society? Oh, come now, Ness, old boy. I understand the situation is tense, but there's no call for bigotry. Oh my gosh, no! I didn't. I only meant, well, guess what? It's the 90s. I can participate in a modern societal paradigm while also proudly displaying the unique traits of my culture, and I don't need your permission to do it. Hey, buddy, I have an idea. Why don't you try being the acting head of state of an entire major world power, with the 3rd highest GDP in the world, I might add, and then call me? No, you have it all wrong. I only meant that you didn't say anything before. You were silent. Oh, yes, he has a point there. We don't know you from Adam, do we? My name is Puyi Huangtaitze, the august child and heir apparent to the ivory throne of the Huangdi of Dalaam. And I never spoke to you before because, from the moment of my birth until very recently, I was required to maintain a solemn oath of silence. Do you have any idea how hard that is? To accidentally stub your toe when you can't talk? To ask for help while being chased by a snow leopard when you can't talk? To learn how to talk when you can't talk? A long silence followed, the other 3 children just as fearful of the young prince's fury as that poor photographer man. Well, do you? Oh, I see, that was not rhetorical. Well, as I would imagine it, I would venture a guess that it would prove quite a difficult existence indeed. It's very hard. 13 long years of constant training of my body and mind, of learning every single stupid little thing to utter perfection. I know how to speak Pig Latin in Latin. I know how to sleep with my eyes open. I know how to do a full planche. When am I ever going to do a full planche? All that for what I had assumed for my whole life would be the sublime, exquisite honor of taking my rightful place as the leader of the chosen 4 against the destroyer of worlds. Puyi stopped pacing around the sand, glared at Ness, spoke through his clenched teeth. Only to find that it is, in fact, my lot in life to serve, to bend and scrape and bow before you. And, oh, what do we have here? Here's a helpful little reminder, lest I forget. Puyi unfurled the hateful scroll and shoved Ness's own grinning, ridiculous face in Ness's face, before throwing it into the sand like a piece of garbage. Look, I never asked to lead this, whatever it is. I don't want to be the leader of anything. It's not my fault. It is your fault. You could have given me the soundstone, you dope. But no, you had to be all, go away. You can't have it. It's my responsibility. Hey, I don't sound like that. You know what? You're right. Let's try that again. Go away. It's my responsibility. Oh, come on. Knock it off already. All you had to do was give me that stupid rock, and I could have finished this whole thing weeks ago, by myself, before you ever even thought to put your friend here in the sand. Oh, this isn't what it looks like. The captain and his wife, she made these cakes, and We couldn't have known that they'd... Anyway, we got a boat to Scaraba. The next sanctuary spot's in the pyramid. Well, good for you. You got yourself a little boat, and it only took you 3 weeks. Looks like you got it all figured out. Except, of course, that the Great Pyramid in Scaraba has been locked for centuries, and the instructions for opening it are written in ancient Coptic glyphics, and I'm the only one among you who can interpret them. Huh, yeah, there you go. Hey, young Master Prince, how about this 2,500-year-old dead language, only ever used in a 300-square-mile region in the entire world? Why don't you go ahead and spend 2 months straight learning that to N5 proficiency? I'm sure that'll come in handy someday. So even if you had made it to the desert by yourselves, you'd still be stuck twiddling your thumbs without me, wouldn't you? But don't mind me, I'm here to serve. And just so we make it official... Puyi, still furious, went to his knees and kowtowed before Ness and his friends. I am the one who will fight beside you. I am the servant of Ness. I will obey Ness. Ness, my life is in your hands. Rising to his feet and wiping the sand off his legs, he looked up to Ness and growled. Unless, of course, you'd like to finish your sunbathing, which I so rudely interrupted. They didn't. The other 3 children all just stood there, ashamed, astonished by Puyi's wrath, not really knowing what to do, what to say, even where to look. During this long, protracted silence, Jeff furrowed his eyebrows in deep thought and scratched his chin. So, your very first words were fuzzy pickles? If Puyi's hard slaps didn't knock some sense into Ness and his friends, then his tongue-lashing certainly did. Only an hour later since they first formally met on the beach, and the 3 of them were now good and checked out of their hotel, wearing their normal people clothes, Ness and Jeff's appropriate summer's postcards well and mailed, and waiting for the sea captain to ready his vessel for immediate passage to Scaraba. As they waited on the docks, Jeff turned to Puyi, who was still scowling and no less miffed about his recent lot in life. I say, before we set sail, your name, the August Child Puyi, etc., etc., it's a good name, powerful, majestic even, but it's a bit unwieldy. Might you be amenable to a nickname? Prince Poo, perhaps? Puyi turned to Jeff with a nasty look, not sure if he was more enraged or bewildered by the suggestion. No, you can't call me Prince Poo. Are you out of your mind? Jeff frowned and turned to Ness. I say, well, Ness, old boy, before we continue, it appears we must master the tones. The tones? Quite right. You see, in the Dalaamese tongue, the same syllables take on different meanings, entirely different words sometimes, when spoken with a certain tone. Now, take the first syllable of the good fellow's name, Poo. The current meaning taken, with its intended tone, that is, Hoo, means something like mighty if you go at it with a sort of scooping, high and low-like sound. Now, if we say it flat, like this, Poo, that's the Dalaamese word for a parasol. Going on, Poo, in an upward tone, is the infinitive form of the verb to somersault, and the same syllable downward, Poo, means, I have left the iron on and burnt a hole straight through the seat of the Archbishop's trousers. Wow, it really says all that? Philology is a slippery discipline, my friend. It cannot and should not be handled with kid gloves. As Jeff gave his impromptu linguistics lesson to Ness, they were both oblivious to Puyi watching them, who, if he was merely angry before, Positively could have fried an egg on top of his bald head now. Even Paula took a few nervous steps away from him. Now, repeat after me. Puyi huang dai zi. Puyi no. Like this. Puyi huang dai zi. Puyi huang tai. Oh dear. We've gone the way of the poor Archbishop's trousers with that one. One more time. Puyi huang tai. Oh, come now, Ness. There's no bouncing ball in the bottom of the screen. Just say it naturally, like this. All right. You can call me Prince Poo. Just stop. Whatever this is. Jeff smiled and turned to his new friend and the newest member of the Chosen Four, now and henceforth to be called Prince Poo. Brilliant. Now that that's sorted, Prince Poo, allow me, on behalf of my compatriots, Ness and Paula, to cordially and officially welcome you to the side of the angels. Jeff gave Prince Poo a little bow and a wave of his hand, but before the moment could be savored very much, the foghorn of the sea captain's ship bellowed through the docks, signaling that it was time to board. Prince Poo scowled and helped himself to the gangplank first, and Ness, Paula, and Jeff sheepishly followed close behind. Soon after, another foghorn sounded and the ship embarked. They were finally headed towards Scaraba and the great pyramid that lied dormant there, and once reached, the promise of the elusive third sanctuary spot at last. The ship sailed a good distance away from Summers, far away enough for Jeff to see it as a good-sized speck on the horizon. Warm but breezy, just a few miles away from the beachside resort, was all he seemed to really need to finally reach a climate suitable for his usual penguin-down winter-green jacket and school uniform. He looked out from the stern of the ship and watched as Summers grew smaller and smaller. Farewell, you mad lot. You beautiful, lotus-eating fools. With that, the fated Chosen Four, bound together by destiny to face alone together the mighty onslaught of Giygas, the destroyer of worlds, were united at long last. You've been listening to The Podcast Against Giygas. The Podcast Against Giygas is an audiobook written and performed by me, Garrett McMahon, based on Earthbound, the Super Nintendo game directed by Shigesato Itoi, with production by William Pulowski and thumbnail design and art direction by David Peters. This podcast stinks. It is also a fan-made project affiliated in no way whatsoever with the Nintendo Corporation or Mr. Itoi. This podcast is free to listen to, ad-free, and always will be. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and I'll see you back next Monday. Till next time.